would you risk your life for an hourly wage, not knowing which service call will lead to your death? Life isn't a game or a movie stage. One wrong decision could mean your last breath. Millionaire football players salute the crowd's cheers, while law enforcement officers fight through trauma and tears.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome once again to my channel, Stopfnkillin. I'm your host, the MOD, also known as the Method of Delivery. Before we get into today's topic, please like, share, and subscribe if you find anything that resonates with you. So, today's topic is perspective. Again, today's topic is perspective. So, in York County, Pennsylvania, 5 officers were assaulted with an AR-15 assault rifle.
Authorities identified the suspect, 24-year-old Matthew James Ruth, as the man who opened fire, killing 3 police officers and critically injuring 2 before being shot dead. The officers killed have been named: Sergeant Cody Becker, Detective Mark Baker, and Detective Isaiah Emenheiser.
Each of these men represented the very best of policing.
The district.
3 of those officers were unalive. 2 of them were critically injured. The suspect in the assault, he was also unalived by 2 of those officers returning fire. Now, this suspect was a domestic violence and stalking suspect, and those officers went to arrest this individual. Now, the victim in this case, she suspected the suspect of burning her car earlier. She told law enforcement that she briefly dated this individual, and he never knew where she stayed, and she never invited him to her house, and these type of things. They only had a brief encounter. But yet and still, whether he burned her car or not is kind of irrelevant. But they did see him on some trail cameras that were installed around their house, looking at her house, scoping her house out with some binoculars and an AR-15 rifle strapped to his chest. Now, these officers went to the suspect's house first, and he wasn't there, and then they went to her house, and it was at her house where they were ambushed. And the thing is, these officers, they sacrificed their lives for this victim. They made the ultimate sacrifice for somebody that they may or may not have known. And my question to you today is, could you make that same sacrifice? Would you make that same sacrifice? I did a little research, and the typical officer in this area of the country makes around $75,000 a year before taxes, give or take. Now, it could go up or down depending on experience, rank, and things like that. But $75,000 is a good, average number. So that $75,000 before taxes breaks down to $6,250 a month, $1,562 a week. Now, let's contrast that with Aaron Rodgers, who plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers, an NFL team. Now, first of all, the NFL and football, or sports in general, is not, something that is essential for society to survive. It's not a 365-day-a-year, 7-day-a-week operation. There is no real acute inherent danger associated with playing NFL football. Yes, they have long-term injuries and concussions and things like that. And maybe they have multiple surgeries for their injuries and things like that. But I've never seen an NFL game where someone was being shot at, or someone was being chased with a knife, or someone ran them over with a car or anything like that. I've never seen a game like that. Anyway, so for the year 2025, Aaron Rodgers is set to make $13.65 million a year. Now, with incentives, he could make $19.5 million a year. But let's just take the number of $13.65 million a year. That breaks down to $1,137,500 a month, which breaks down to $284,375 a week for an entertainer, for someone who plays the sport. who doesn't have to worry about when he goes to work whether he'll come home or not to his friends or family, whether he'll be unalive. He doesn't have to worry about any of those things. The most he has to worry about is how many interceptions he'll throw, or will he be sacked on a play by a defensive, player. And so when I look at law enforcement in this area who brings home before taxes roughly $1,562 a week, and I look at someone like Aaron Rodgers who brings home $284,375 a week, and that's on the low end, I ask myself this question. Could I, as an individual, do what those officers did? Could I go into a situation, into an unknown situation, and give my life in the service of others, to save others, so that others may live? And I did law enforcement for a while. And I've been in multiple serious, life-threatening situations, even situations where some officers didn't make it. And I can honestly say that we need to keep things in perspective. Not all law enforcement is good. Not all law enforcement is bad. But one thing that all law enforcement shares is that when they put that uniform on and they go out into these streets, their lives are in danger. Maybe they go out and they never draw their firearm. They never pull over a car. Or maybe they go out and they open the door, and that's the last door that they open. You just never know. And so I'm saying it to say that sometimes when you see law enforcement and maybe they're having a bad day, cut them some slack. Just maybe, they came from a situation like what happened in York County, Pennsylvania. Maybe they just saw one of their fellow brothers or fellow sisters unalive by somebody. Or maybe they saw a child or an elderly person or just anybody, who was critically injured, and it played on their heartstrings. We don't know. But one thing we do know is that we need law enforcement. We don't need the NFL or any other sports team for that matter. And so we should embrace law enforcement. We should try to work with them and help them when we can. And I'm only talking about the good law enforcement officers. $1,562 a week versus $284,375 a week. Think about that and keep that in perspective as you interact with law enforcement who may give their lives for you. Thank you. Have a safe day. My heart goes out to those officers, their family and friends, as well as anyone that has lost loved ones due to gratuitous violence. Because remember, there is no you and there is no me. There is only we in this fight. And we must collectively, together, stop the fucking killing. Thank you and have a safe day.